The Cookie. In 2005's The Ginger Dead Man, the villain is literally a gingerbread cookie possessed by the soul of a serial killer. It all starts with Millard Findlemeyer, a completely unhinged criminal who storms into a diner and leaves multiple victims behind during an attack. The only survivor is Sarah Lee, who's left traumatized by the experience. After Millard is executed, his ashes are sent to his mother, a woman involved with dark magic. She mixes her son's ashes into a gingerbread dough recipe and leaves it at the bakery where Sarah works. During the preparation, one employee accidentally cuts his finger, and blood drips into the dough. The result? The Ginger Dead Man is born inside the oven already talking, cursing, and acting like a psychopath. What makes it even funnier is that the movie treats him like a serious threat, even though he's small enough to fit inside a backpack. And somehow he still manages to chase adults around, use kitchen knives, and turn the bakery into complete chaos. The design also helps sell the trashy atmosphere. The movie became such a hit among fans of ridiculous horror movies that got several sequels and even a crossover with another movie we're about to talk about, The Hat. In 1996's Uncle Sam takes one of the biggest symbols of the United States and turns it into a completely insane zombie slasher. The villain is Sam Harper, an army sergeant known for being abusive, aggressive, and hated even by his own fellow soldiers. During the Gulf War, he ends up dying in a friendly fire incident, but his body returns to his hometown right around the 4th of July celebrations, and obviously things go horribly wrong. His nephew Jody grows up believing his uncle was a war hero. The kid idolizes patriotism, military parades, and everything related to the army, but little by little, he discovers that Sam was actually a cruel person, even before dying. And when the body suddenly rises from the coffin one night, the movie completely gives up on trying to feel normal. Sam steals a classic Uncle Sam costume. The result looks incredibly weird. It's like a possessed patriotic mascot trying to become the next Jason Voorhees. But the craziest detail is that he doesn't kill random people. His targets are anti-American people or anyone disrespecting the holiday. There are people getting chased for burning flags, corrupt politicians, and even teenagers causing trouble during the celebration. The movie uses fireworks, parades, and American symbols during the kill scenes, which somehow makes everything even more ridiculous. The sausages. In Yoga Hosers, the main villains are not sausages called Bratzis. And yes, the movie fully commits to that idea without any shame. The story follows Colleen Collette and Colleen McKenzie, two Canadian teenagers obsessed with yoga who work at a convenience store. Their lives are basically school, phones, and complaining about customers until bizarre creatures suddenly start appearing inside the store. These monsters are experiments created by a German scientist hiding underground since World War II. His plan is to build a Fourth Reich using mutant bratwursts made from sausage meat and German army blood. The result is a group of tiny creatures wearing World War II uniforms, speaking German, and attacking people in completely ridiculous ways. The Bratzis have sausage-like bodies but with deformed human faces and weirdly detailed expressions. And the worst part is that the movie uses practical effects for everything. It somehow makes the whole thing both uncomfortable and hilarious at the same time. The Colleens eventually team up with monster hunter Guy Lapointe, played by Johnny Depp, to stop the attacks. Bambi's Revenge. In Bambi, The Reckoning, the classic innocent deer from childhood basically turns into the final boss of a horror game, and that's not even an exaggeration. The movie takes the tragic idea behind the original Bambi, especially the death of Bambi's mother, and turns it into a revenge story where the animal decides to give the trauma back to humans. The story follows Zana and her son Ben, who get into a car accident in an isolated forest. The problem is that there's a gigantic creature roaming the area, a monstrous deer hunting any human who crosses its path. And the movie makes it clear very early on that this is not a normal animal. This version of Bambi looks more like a mix between a deer and some kind of mutant lab creature. What's most interesting is that the movie tries to turn the character into a symbol of nature itself, rebelling against humanity. The deer hunts people almost like payback for the destruction caused by hunters and for the death of his mother. It's basically like someone looked at the trauma from the original cartoon and said, all right, now Bambi's done suffering. And all of this is part of the shared horror universe that started with Winnie the Pooh, Blood, and Honey. Yes, there's actually a Pooniverse. The whole idea feels like an internet joke that somehow went way too far. Maybe that's exactly why these movies get so much attention. The cotton candy. In Killer Clowns from Outer Space, an entire town starts getting attacked by aliens that look like circus clowns. And the worst part is that the clowns actually look like that naturally. They arrive on Earth inside a spaceship shaped like a circus tent and begin capturing residents as if they're putting on some twisted performance. The fun of the movie comes from how everything feels like a completely insane parody of an alien invasion. While other extraterrestrials use normal futuristic weapons, the clowns use ray guns that turn people into cotton candy cocoons. Then they hang the cocoons inside the ship and literally drink the victim's blood through giant straws. And they don't stop there. There's alien popcorn that turns into living creatures, shadows that swallow people whole, and even a balloon dog used to track victims. The most disturbing part is that the clowns actually enjoy the attacks. They perform tricks, laugh, and treat every murder like it's part of a children's show. The Snowman. In 1997's Jack Frost, the villain is literally a serial killer snowman. Before that, he was Jack Seiler, an extremely dangerous murderer being transported to his execution. But during the trip, an accident happens involving a truck carrying genetic waste. Jack's body somehow mixes with the snow, and he's reborn as a creature made of ice. Yes, that's the movie's official explanation. After that, Jack heads straight to the small town of Snowmonton, looking for Sheriff Sam Tyler, the man responsible for capturing him years earlier. And then the movie becomes as trashy as possible. The snowman gains absurd powers, being able to melt, move through tiny cracks in doors, rebuild his own body, and create frozen weapons. But the movie never lets him become truly scary, because Jack spends half the runtime making terrible jokes while chasing victims. The design also adds a lot to the accidental comedy vibe. The snowman looks like cheap Christmas decoration, with a frozen smile and bulging eyes the entire time. And somehow the movie still tries to convince the audience that this thing is an unstoppable threat. Some scenes are so ridiculous they feel like parody sketches. The Basket. In 1982's Basket Case, the villain is Belial, a creature so bizarre that most people spend the entire movie trying to figure out what they're even looking at. Belial was born as the conjoined twin of Dwayne Bradley, but doctors forcibly separated them when they were children. The problem is that Belial was basically a deformed mass of living flesh with a human face, tiny arms, and a completely explosive temper. After the surgery, the family literally treats Belial like garbage and throws the creature away, but Dwayne saves his brother and spends years secretly taking care of him. When the two finally arrive in New York as adults carrying a mysterious wicker basket, the mission is simple: find the doctors involved in the surgery and get revenge one by one. And this is where the movie becomes truly bizarre. For a huge part of the story, Belial stays hidden inside the basket like some walking secret. But once he comes out, everything turns into chaos. The creature jumps around, screams, scratches people, and moves in a completely frantic way thanks to the movie's cheap practical effects and awkward stop-motion animation. The Smoke. In Evil Bong, the main horror of the story is a talking bong named EB. And not just any bong. The object has a human face, its own personality, and behaves like some cursed entity created through voodoo magic. Her plan? Consume human souls and turn the entire planet into one giant psychedelic dimension. The story begins when a group of college students buys an old bong, without having any idea what it really is. Among them are Larnell, Brett, Bachman, and the nerdy Alistair, who clearly ended up in the wrong friend group. As soon as they start using the bong, strange things begin happening. Little by little, the victims get dragged into the so-called bong world, a surreal dimension, and at this point, the movie completely loses all limits. Inside this world, there are killer dancers, bizarre creatures, and random attacks everywhere. The funniest part is that EB treats everything with almost sarcastic calmness, like trapping human souls is just part of the entertainment. The movie fully embraces this ridiculous comedy vibe, so much so that the franchise ended up getting countless sequels and eventually crossed over with The Ginger Dead Man.
Uh-oh, I'm gonna cream. Whoa, 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 whoa.
Neverland. In Peter Pan's Neverland Nightmare, the character who once took children on magical adventures is now kidnapped in a red van labeled Neverland. And the movie makes it very clear from the beginning that this version of Peter Pan is absolutely nothing like the charming original. Here, Peter is portrayed as a completely disturbed former circus performer. He wears mime-like makeup and has half his face deformed by an old scar. The most uncomfortable detail is that the scar leaves one side of his mouth stuck in a permanent smile. The story follows Wendy Darling trying to rescue her younger brother Michael after he's kidnapped by Peter. As she investigates the disappearance, she realizes that Neverland isn't a magical place. It's actually the name of the decaying hideout where Peter keeps the children. The movie completely replaces the fantasy of the original story with a dirty atmosphere that almost feels like a criminal thriller. And maybe the craziest change of all is Tinker Bell. Instead of a sweet fairy, she appears as one of Peter's allies, completely addicted to drugs she believes are fairy dust. It's the kind of idea that sounds like something invented in an internet creepypasta, except it somehow became a real movie. During the search, Wendy encounters a twisted version of Captain Hook, a survivor of one of Peter's old attacks, now mutilated and trapped inside the mansion. This movie is also part of the shared Winnie the Pooh, Blood and Honey horror universe. The Call. In SpongeBob Horror, short film The Call of Squidward, Bikini Bottom basically turns into an end-of-the-world wasteland. The fan-made short transforms the world of SpongeBob SquarePants into a landscape filled with ruins, scattered bones, and creatures that are completely mentally broken. And at the center of all of it is Squidward, except here he's not just the annoyed neighbor who hates noise. He's a cult leader controlling the survivors of Bikini Bottom through his voice alone. The short heavily implies that listening to Squidward for too long can destroy someone's sanity. The story follows a woman who survives a shipwreck and ends up arriving there without understanding what happened. Little by little, she realizes she's walking through the remains of the old underwater city. There's even a bizarre scene where she finds Patrick dead and tied to a cross. And then comes maybe the most disturbing part of the short, SpongeBob himself. He appears as a completely obedient servant to Squidward, capturing survivors and bringing victims back to his master. His cheerful personality is completely gone. This version of SpongeBob acts almost like a silent slasher, appearing between the ruins with that uncomfortable smile that somehow feels wrong in every possible way. In the end, the woman is captured by SpongeBob, and the final scene shows her about to suffer the same fate as Patrick, Mickey Mouse. In The Mousetrap, Mickey Mouse officially becomes a slasher killer. The story follows Alex, a girl celebrating her 21st birthday while working the late shift at an arcade. Her friends show up after closing time to surprise her, but the place quickly turns into a giant trap when a killer wearing a grotesque Mickey Mouse mask starts hunting everyone down. And the movie clearly understands what its biggest weapon is, the uncomfortable imagery. Because no matter how many slashers already exist, it's still weird seeing a character associated with childhood wandering through a dark arcade carrying a knife. The mask helps a lot with that feeling. It doesn't try to look realistic or traditionally scary. It's basically Mickey's classic face, frozen into an empty, lifeless expression, almost like a broken mascot staring directly at the camera. The killer also plays around with the setting constantly. He shuts off lights, uses the arcade attractions, appears between the machines, and turns the colorful environment into a claustrophobic maze. Mickey Mouse entered the public domain and immediately became a horror movie. The Gold. In Leprechaun, the main horror of the story is an Irish killer leprechaun obsessed with his gold. Everything begins when a man steals the leprechaun's pot of gold in Ireland and escapes to the United States. But he manages to trap the creature inside a crate using a 4-leaf clover. Years later, a girl named Tori, played by Jennifer Aniston, moves into that house with her father without having any idea what's hidden there. And of course, someone eventually removes the clover and releases the creature. From that point on, the movie turns into an obsessive hunt for the 57 stolen gold coins. The leprechaun starts chasing anyone who touched one of them, but always in the most ridiculous ways possible. Unlike silent slashers like Jason Voorhees or Michael Myers, he never shuts up. He constantly jokes around, speaks in weird rhymes, and genuinely seems to enjoy terrorizing people. And the character has some incredibly random obsessions that feel completely improvised. Several times he literally stops chasing victims because he notices dirty shoes and suddenly feels the need to clean them immediately. But the best part of the franchise is how it completely abandons all logic as the movies continue. And all of that still with Warwick Davis giving the character absolutely full energy. The truck. In Maximum Overdrive, the main villain is a giant truck with the face of Marvel's Green Goblin attached to the front, and somehow that works perfectly within the complete insanity of this movie. The story begins when Earth passes through the tail of a mysterious comet. After that, every machine on the planet suddenly goes insane and starts attacking humans. Soda machines explode in people's faces, electric knives turn on by themselves, and even a steamroller starts crushing everything in sight. But the true leader of the chaos is a monstrous white Western star truck that appears commanding other vehicles at a truck stop called Dixie Boy. The detail that makes this truck impossible to forget is the giant green goblin mask. Its glowing eyes and frozen smile make it feel like the vehicle is actually enjoying hunting down the survivors, and the movie never explains why someone thought putting that thing on the truck was a good idea. While the characters remain trapped inside the truck stop trying to survive, the trucks surround the place like predators waiting for food. And the funniest part is that the green goblin truck almost feels like it has its own personality. It honks, intimidates people, and behaves almost like the leader of a truck gang. This was the only movie ever directed by Stephen King. Years later, King himself admitted he was using a lot of substances during production. And honestly, after watching a truck with a Marvel villain face leading a machine uprising, that explanation makes perfect sense. On screen right now is a video where we show the craziest horror movies you won't believe actually exist. There's a killer beach, an evil Grinch, and much more. Click and watch. See you there.